UFO sightings are reported all the time around the world, but many stand out more than others. Some cases have evidence that's so unique and puzzling, scientists cannot explain it. For some, alien life would in fact be the only reasonable explanation. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious and interesting UFO encounters. A UFO in Brazil. Fernando Becerra and Wilson da Silva Oliveira had been fishing in Sao Paulo, Brazil. This was on October 1st, 1995. While they were gathering their fishing nets, they saw something in the sky. At first, they assumed it was probably a balloon, since it just kept floating, but this assumption quickly changed. They realised that the object was emitting an extremely bright yellow light. It seemed to move towards them, but it was coming more quickly than a balloon would have been able to move. At that point, they knew it must have been an alien spacecraft. The pair immediately got back into their boat. Fernando hid at the bottom of the boat. Wilson said he was so frightened that he believed he would die from fear. They even tried to drive away in the boat, but the engine stopped working as soon as the UFO flew over them. They were able to see at the bottom of it had flashing lights that were so bright they could see crabs on the other side of the river. After many efforts to start the engine, they were finally able to get away. The UFO landed on an island nearby. The 2 men told their families about what they saw, but they were still so frightened that they were unable to sleep that night. Even medication didn't help them stay calm enough to sleep. They kept replaying the night's events over and over in their heads. The next day, they went back to the spot where the UFO had landed to see if it was still there, or if there was any signs that it had been there. They found an 18-foot wide circle in the grass where it had landed. This was along with some rectangular indentations in the dirt, presumably from the legs of the object. Some of the vegetation was burnt, and it was all flattened as if something heavy had been on top. They returned home once again, and this time they reported what they saw to a Brazilian newspaper. Researchers from the National Institute of Aerospace Phenomena read the story and began an investigation of their own. They took molds of the indentations found and took other samples from the vegetation and dirt at the landing site. They also found traces of radiation. The NIAP classified it as a close encounter of the second kind. This was because of the effects it had on the boat and the ground, including the vegetation and the soil. Not only did the boat's engine stop, but the men found their tools and metal parts of the boat showed corrosion that wasn't there before the incident. They also suffered from eye irritation and upset stomachs. Although the soil sample showed normal pH levels, researchers tried planting seeds in the samples to see what would happen. The seeds planted in the soil samples grew quickly, while the ones planted in soil from the outside of the circle didn't grow and developed fungi. The researchers couldn't come up with an explanation for this strange occurrence. The molds of the indentation at the landing site were also added to the mystery. There weren't any known normal aircrafts with parts that matched the molds. They were completely unique. They even double-checked this information with the military, who claimed they had no aircraft in the area on that particular night. They never found any explanation for any of the evidence found at the site. The Robert Taylor case. Robert Taylor was a Livingston Development Corporation forestry worker in Scotland. On November 9, 1979, Taylor was inspecting a woods with his dog. While they were walking, his normally happy and friendly dog began whining and growling for no apparent reason. As Taylor picked the dog up, he claimed he felt a shift in the air. It felt thicker, almost as if there was electricity. He also said the birds suddenly stopped chirping. Finally, he saw an object he knew couldn't be from Earth. The object was very large and metallic. It was in the shape of a sphere about 20 feet wide, and it was hovering just above the ground. As he got closer to his object, 2 smaller spheres appeared out of it and began moving towards him. They had spikes coming out of them that hooked onto his trousers. This dragged him back to the main sphere. Just before losing consciousness, he remembered noticing a strong burnt smell and hissing sound. 20 minutes later, Taylor woke up in the same spot with his dog nearby, but the object was gone. his clothes were torn and he had scratches and bruises all over his body. He tried to radio for help, but couldn't speak. Though he could barely walk, he managed to drag himself back to his truck, but it wouldn't start. After walking the mile to his house, his wife called the police and a doctor. At first, the police assumed he had been assaulted by another person. This theory was questioned once they visited the spot that this had happened. They carefully inspected the whole area and found 2 indentations, possibly from a ladder. They also found round holes that went in the same direction as the smaller spheres. The police found no other tracks to show how the object got there in the first place. Many theories have gone around about this incident. In fact, some people believe that Taylor may have experienced a seizure caused by a mirage sent from Venus. But regardless, most people didn't believe he would make something like that up. Everyone that knew him to be an honest man. His story never changed, and he never wanted fame from his story. To this day, UFO investigators are still investigating this. They say the case won't be closed until new information comes along. The Zimbabwe Encounter. September 14th, 1994. 62 children at the Republic of Zimbabwe Aerial School saw 3 metallic spheres flying in the sky above where they were playing. They saw red flashing lights and would suddenly disappear and reappear in another part of the sky. Finally, the spheres slowly flew down close to the school. One of these spheres came down and hovered just above the ground a few hundred feet away from an area filled with thorn bushes and poisonous snakes and spiders. Although they weren't supposed to go near this area, they did anyway and approached the sphere. The children then saw a creature around 3 or 4 foot tall come out of the spherical object. This creature was dressed in all black and had long black hair. Its neck, face, arms and legs were all thin, and it had large black eyes. The creature approached the children, while a similar creature stood on top of the object. Some of the younger children were terrified, as they believed the creatures were demons who ate young children, and so they ran away screaming. The creature suddenly vanished, and the one on top appeared again, behind the object. Both creatures stared at the remaining children without moving. The children who were still outside said the creatures communicated with them telepathically through their eyes. One girl said that for the rest of the day, she felt awful and couldn't get the images out of her mind that the creatures had put in her brain. She said they were there to warn people about destroying the planet. If they didn't stop, they would face consequences. The girl felt these consequences would mean there'd be no more air and everyone would die. These ideas were placed in her mind from the creatures, supposedly. Another child felt the creatures placed the idea in his mind that human technology was too powerful and that something bad would happen because of it. After this, they suddenly vanished again. The spherical object flew away quickly before disappearing into thin air. The whole event lasted around 15 minutes. Cynthia Hind, a UFO researcher, investigated this incident the next day. She had the students draw pictures of what they saw. 35 of them were remarkably similar. She scanned the landing spot with a counter, but didn't find any trace of radiation in the entire area. Not everyone believes that this event really occurred, however. Some people feel there's not enough evidence to say the children were telling the truth. He believed it may have all been a prank, and that the younger children may have been pressured by some of the older children in the group to say it really happened. Not realising how far and serious authorities would take this situation, of course. Whether or not this is true, 12 children presented at the time gave accounts that were all consistent with one another, leading researchers to at least rule out mass hysteria for sure. So what do you make of these UFO encounters? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community whilst working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.